Let's talk about the PAC financials, the PAC network, and the ongoing lawsuits.
Conference Expansion and Realignment is always in the news, so we're back on the big mountain to keep you updated.
Hey, nice to have you here on the mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. We're going to have a short episode here regarding the PAC-12, specifically Oregon State and Washington State, for all of our Beavs and Cougs fans. We appreciate you sticking here with the mountain, and we try to do one of these updates every 2 weeks or so, unless there's more going on. It's pretty quiet right now. We're almost into the month of June already. But I want to talk about the financials, which then we'll get into the network and just some of the ongoing lawsuits here with the PAC. So the 2023 financial numbers, that'd be the 22-23 fiscal year, school year for them, just kind of came out. Their revenues were almost $604 million for the PAC, as we know the PAC-12 to be. That was a record for them. That was up from last year, the 22 fiscal year, up $24 million, which they had $580 million last year. However, while in total revenues they had gone up, the actual distributions to the member schools are actually down $3 million from $36 million in 22 to $33 million or thereabouts in 23. Why? Well, one reason of that was because of the conference spending of almost $7 million because of ongoing lawsuits. The two biggest being the NLRB case, which we'll get to here in a moment, and the Hubbard antitrust case. Another reason was the $4.23 million that they put into the PAC-12 Network's new studios and production facility. So over $10 million spent on the network and on these ongoing lawsuits. So we're talking about the network. Let's talk a little bit more about that. They signed off on their final live event here just last week, Steve, so you're not going to be seeing any PAC-12 Network broadcasts for now, at least. And they're not really a media distribution company any longer. Now they're a production company. And they have now renamed the PAC network to be PAC Enterprises is the new name. And they appointed Michael Molinari as the Senior Vice President of Business Development and Studio Operations. His job is going to be to turn this network into a source of revenue, something we've talked about for several months. What are they going to do with the network? How are they going to make this asset not become a liability and a weight on them, but try to, make it revenue producing? Well, Michael Molinari, that is his job. They've done away, at least for now, with the broadcasting piece. They're going to focus on the production piece. He has also, Mr. Molinari has worked with ESPN and the Big Ten Network in the past. He has over a decade now working in football and men's basketball broadcasts as well. So, as we know, the PAC Enterprises are going to be handling the production side of the 11 home games for the Beavs and the Cougs this fall, and those will be broadcast on CW. So CW doesn't really have the broadcast side of it. The production side of it. They're just going to be broadcasting the games. The Fox games, obviously, Fox has everything that they need. They're going to do their own thing. But there is a partnership here with CW, at least for this next year. Let's talk about some lawsuits. As for the NLRB lawsuit in Southern California, now remember, there's kind of three defendants here. It's USC, the PAC-12, and the NCAA. Many have opined that their case, the USC, PAC, and NCAA case, was fairly ineffective. There wasn't a lot of momentum coming out of that. I mean, you even heard that when people took the stand, when their witnesses took the stand, they're almost contradicting each other. That is just as bad as it can get when you're calling witnesses that are contradicting each other, for Pete's sake. And the odds that I've seen here, a lot of people just seem to think this is going to go in favor of the NLRB, and that means that's going to be making players employees. Also, we know that the conferences approved this House lawsuit just last week. We did an episode. We talked about that, I guess, on our live episode, trying to get a special guest to talk a little bit more about that settlement as well. And the PAC was the final conference to approve that, at least out of the Power Five. That doesn't mean it's a done deal yet. It's waiting on court approval, but at least on the side of the NCAA and the power conferences, they all have their approval of that.
The defendant side.
The defendant side is all good to go. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens with the rulings there. So there's still a lot going on with the PAC. There's one last thing I want to talk about that's more fun. This is more factual. So anything you want to add to this, Steve?
Yeah, there's just a few things. So we were talking about the PAC, the network, so the PAC-12 network. It'll be interesting to see. I'm really interested to see what the production looks like on the CW this year. So I'm excited about watching these Bees and Cougs games on the CW. I talked about this before. I was impressed. This last year was the first time I'd ever watched the Pac-12 network. They had their pregame and postgame, and I was impressed. I thought I expected it to be some rinky-dink production, and it was pretty good. So, with that production carrying over onto the CW, I'm interested to see what it looks like. And I'm interested to see what kind of branding they use. Do they have a Pac-12? They use the Pac-12 logo or whatever. What that branding looks like, just out of curiosity's sake. Just really interested. This is the first time we've seen a major conference that had its own network go under, as far as I can remember. Right. And so to see kind of what happens with that going forward, I think is really curious. It's really interesting. So the other part, I just want a quick comment on the USC PAC NLRB case. That was a total disaster. Their defense and the witnesses, and really, I wonder, was that a matter of the attorneys that were preparing witnesses and trying to make that case? Was it their incompetence, or was it just the material? I mean, when you have to answer honestly in court, sometimes you can't make your best case when you have to answer honestly. So anyways, that'll be interesting. And really the idea of, that's really a USC case. Yes. But USC is leaving the conference, and the PAC is kind of left to deal with the results, which you talked about many times, was one of those liabilities. When we talked about the PAC breaking up, you mentioned it isn't just all about the revenues that are coming in. How do we split those? What are we going to do with these liabilities? So that rears its head yet again. So that's really all the comments I had on what you...
And these were two of the bigger liabilities. There's others. But yes. Two of the larger liabilities was this NLRB case and the House case or settlement potentially now. And of course, that was all written into their settlement agreement, and they're all going to have skin in the game for that and all that kind of jazz. We don't know exactly what it says. That part was redacted. But we know they're probably, I would assume they're sharing that pretty equally amongst the 12 of them. To get back to the Pac-12 network, I believe we had talked a while back that there was speculation that the branding part maybe was a piece that was, I don't want to say was holding up the agreement, but something they had to figure out was, obviously you're going to have your CW logo somewhere on the screen. Are we going to see a PAC Enterprises logo somewhere on the screen? Certainly they'll be given credit for the production of it. Right. But are you going to actually get that logo on the screen with the CW? Time will tell, and we shall see. If I was the PAC, the PAC-2, I'd want my logo anywhere you can possibly get that logo. So we'll see if they get it out there.
And you'd think they'd be able to come up with something. It's pretty easy branding the PAC network on the CW or something like that. Yeah. PAC-12 on the CW or something.
You would think it's that easy, but it seems like these days nothing's easy. But let's get to something fun here to wrap this one up, Steve. I saw this, and I thought, I'm going to throw this on the back of this episode because I think it's fun. And it's something that we've been talking about hypothetically in terms of what's going to happen with the PAC. Are they going to rebuild the PAC? Are they going to merge with the Mountain West, one way or the other? Are they going to be invited by the Big 12? Whatever the case may be. And actually, we're both on Twitter now. I'm starting to do some tweeting or Xing out there. So if you guys want to follow us on Twitter, I certainly had just been putting stuff out there about this, about the where things are going to go. If you've heard us before, you kind of know our opinions on this. But bookings.com, the bookmaker there, made hypothetical odds on a new PAC. And so I'm not going to go through all of them, but he listed a whole bunch of them here. I'll give you the top couple. And it's really no surprise. It's the teams we've really been talking about. If you're interested in those hypotheticals, we did a really cool one not too long ago on rebuilding the PAC. That seems to still be getting views and clicks. That's an interesting topic that we did. So you can go back and check that one out. So their number one, the best odds here, probably not surprising, San Diego State University, the school that has been trying to get out of the Mountain West. They're at plus 250, so the best odds is them. The next one's Colorado State University. I don't think I would have them as my second best, but I know that there's a lot there, and I see a lot of headlines that kind of puts Colorado State up there. They're at plus 300. Interestingly, Steve, also at plus 300 is no expansion and the PAC disbands. So he actually gave some odds to a just a complete annihilation. Not going to be in existence anymore. As plus 300, I was surprised it was that high. So we'll see. So the next one was UNLV at plus 350. So they're really the third team that he had at plus 350. Then Boise at plus 400. And rounding out the top 5 teams, not surprisingly, all of them from the Mountain West Conference, Fresno State at plus 650. So that's getting up there pretty high. They then, I'll just tell the next one because it's not a Mountain West team. They pretty much had all the Mountain West schools on there. But number 6 that they had here in terms of a school was a school we talked about on that episode, UTSA at plus 750. They also had one other Texas school, and I'm just going to bring this up because it was not a school that we talked about when we did that PAC episode, hypothetical episode, and this is North Texas. Now he has it as plus 1,400, so pretty long stretch, but I was like, hey, who else does he have on here? And he did have North Texas as being one of them. I know our friend, that college football guy, has done a lot of this kind of stuff too. So just wanted to bring that up. It was fun. You throw it out there for what it's worth. Do you have any comments on what his odds are?
So, no, I think that mostly it makes a lot of sense. I think it'd be interested to find out if there was a merger, would that one pay out, the one that you mentioned, the PAC disbanding or whatever, if they merged, which I think is the most likely scenario, would that end up paying out? And then my other comment would be, maybe we weren't so crazy when we were looking at those Texas teams as well, because we had some commenters that thought we were a little nuts for trying to dip down into Texas. But if they were going to rebuild, that the two obvious candidates are looking in the Mountain West, and then also if you could get down into some Texas markets, I think that'd be huge, and that's what we talked about.
Right.
I actually have a question for you. So were there any? You and I, we really talked about possible FCS teams. Were there any FCS teams? Did he give odds on any of those? Do you remember?
I don't think there were. I think it was pretty much all Mountain West. It was UTSA, North Texas. He had Tulane on there as well, outside of the Mountain West. And I think that was about it. It was pretty much all the Mountain West schools and a few others sprinkled in. I don't think there was any FCS. I don't remember.
So since we did our episode where we brought up some FCS, I have seen some people mention. So we had some commenters, and then I've heard on some national podcasts and radio shows that the NCAA actually recently made it much harder to move up from FCS to FBS with a bigger. I think the price went from like $1 million to $4 million or something.
It wasn't even. It was like 100,000.
Okay.
The previous price was.
It was easy.
Really easy. Yeah. Yes.
And so since then I've seen a lot of speculation that because of that bump up, and then also because of everything going on with the House settlement or whatever, that maybe we won't see any FCS move up in general. So that might be a little bit of a barrier that we didn't know about at the time.
Sure. The other thing I'll just point out, Wilner actually put out some predictions for him, or odds for him, a few weeks ago, so I wanted to bring that up. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but he has odds of a rebuilt PAC with an assortment of G5 schools. So some Mountain West, and he had a whole list of different things. But this was his highest one. He has this, so it's a PAC with an assortment of G5 schools to be a 51% odds of happening. 51% for Wilner. He had 3 different options of a rebuilt PAC, and probably not surprisingly, because he's a PAC guy.
Yeah.
But if you added up the 3 percentages, and of course all of his predictions were at 100%. He divided everything out. If you do the rebuilt PAC, 94%. He gives a rebuilt PAC a 94% likelihood of happening. Whew, that's awfully high. I am not that close to 90. I'm not close to 94%, but he is. He did not give a prediction of OSU and WSU actually joining the Mountain West. I'm going to call it joining, not merging with, but joining the Mountain West. He said it's unlikely, but he didn't give it a percentage.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I've always said since the very beginning that I thought the most likely thing was a merger between what's left in the PAC and the Mountain West. The problem is that everyone wants to put labels on it, like we talked about, and then how does that work out as far as odds? If they end up merging, how do you? But I did have one other point, or one other thing I wanted to bring up. So we've been doing this College Football 2030 series, which is a look, what the college football world is going to look like in 2030 at the end of the decade. Our last episode we did the 2 power conferences. Right. I said where I think that what they're going to be, the Big Ten and the SEC. Our next one coming up in June is the other conferences. What I think the other conferences is going to look like. So we should have that out probably in the first week of June, which is coming up here pretty soon.
It's next week.
Yeah. So
it starts the end of this week, but we'll get the episode out.
Right. So this is a pretty timely topic. And something I've been working on. I've been thinking about. I mean, obviously, I've already been kind of, as far as the PAC and the Mountain West are concerned, I've already been, putting out my ideas publicly. So there might not be a bunch of surprises there. Yeah. But I hope everyone will check that out, because for me, I think it's the Power 2 and everybody else. We're still stuck on this, the Power 5 going down to the Power 4. And I know the college football playoff is structured that way, but they're going to have a chance to go back and look at how things are. And I think definitely by the time we get to the end of the decade, and probably much sooner than that, it's going to be very clear that it's those Power 2 and everybody else. And to me, I still think a rebuilt or merged or reverse merged or whatever PAC with Mountain West will compete really well against the everybody else conferences. So anyways, look for that episode. I'm excited about it.
Hard to believe we're now at the last episode of that series. It feels like yesterday we were talking about doing the series in January. It was like, hey, let's try this series, and here we are at the end of it's June. And before you know it, we're going to be doing previews and stuff. And just as a reminder, we started this as a pick episode, betting, if you will, or just making picks on stuff. We're going to be picking the Beavs and the Cougs throughout. Mm-hmm. So, hey, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We've been staying on this ever since the very first filing in the case for the PAC, and we're just Beavs and Cougs fans now. Yeah. It's just the way it works. So, anyway, hey, make sure you give this one a like. Again, subscribe if you like our content. We'll see you guys next time on the Big Mountain.